Categories and rates. In this training video, we're going to go over 3 questions. What are categories and rates? How do I set them up? And how do I use them? First question, what are categories and rates? Categories and rates are used to classify and organize certain items in Studiometry. There are 4 different types of categories, each of which applies to a different item type. To better show you what this means, I'm going to open Studiometry's Preferences window and go to the Categories and Rates section. Here we can see 4 different boxes, one for each category type. First we have client categories, then project statuses, project categories, and our debt credit types or rates. Now when you create a new client in Studiometry, it will automatically be assigned with your default client category. You can change it to a different category. You can create or customize any of these client categories, but really it's just every client will be assigned a category. You can use this to organize your clients however you'd like, and it also can be used to color coordinate your clients so that when they're in the main window, they will appear with a color based on their category. Next are project statuses and project categories. Now, similar to how when you create a new client, a client category is automatically assigned, when you create a new project, a project status and project category are automatically assigned to that project. Now again, both of these lists are completely customizable. You can add or remove categories or change the colors, but really project statuses and categories and client categories are all just used to organize your clients and projects. You can change the status or the category of a client or project at any time, and you can use the client's category and the project's status and category to create summaries or groups of items. It's really just a good way to organize your Studiometry data however you'd like. And finally, we have debt credit types or rates. Now, whenever you create a new work or expense item in Studiometry, you'll have to assign it a debt credit type. Similar to how when you create a new client, it will be assigned a category and a new project will be assigned a status and category. Now this list of debt credit types is basically your rates. Now the green ones are the built-in default types, which can be customized but they can't be deleted, and then the white ones are anything else that we've added onto there. Debt credit types are a little more complex than the standard client and project category and statuses, and that you can have a lot more information associated with your types and rates. To show you this, I'm going to double click on one of the types, and this brings up the rate editing window. Here we can see the name is entered, but we can also see all of these other fields. Each rate type can have a function, which will show you if it's a positive or negative rate. It can have a type, which will determine if it's a standard item, which would be just a flat rate expense, an hourly item, where you would enter your hours and the rate, or a recurring item that will automatically create new items on your projects periodically. And for each of these, we have settings below for the rate, the cost, and any markup as well. So as you can see here, there's a lot more to modify with your debt credit types than with the simple project categories and statuses and client categories. We'll go into a little more detail about this later via the rates editing window. So that should answer the first question of what are categories and rates. So let's move on to the next question, how do I set these up? It's very simple. We're going to remain in the Preferences window, Categories and Rates section. And for client categories, project statuses, and project categories, to create a new one, all you do is click on the plus button below the list. It will add a new line, and you can name the category and assign it a color if you'd like. We can see here that the confirmed client category is in bold, which indicates that it's the default category. So when we create a new client, it will just assign that category. We can change this to whatever category we'd like. We can rearrange the categories so that they appear in a different order. But for those 3, it's just really simple modifying these lists to be however you'd like. The debt credit types or rates are a little more complex, so we actually have a separate editing window that we can use to modify these items. We can access that window by clicking on this little button here, or we can go to the timesheet window and select Edit Rates, and this will bring up the Categories and Rates window. This is the same list of items that appeared in the Preferences window, but we have a lot more control and we can see a lot more information in this window. Now, if you have a type of work that you commonly do and you would ever like to be able to pull a report that shows you all of your work of that type, I'd recommend creating it as a category or a rate. You can have as many items in here as you'd like, and you can organize them into groups and rearrange them, and it's really just the more finite detail that you have in your categories and rates, the easier it is later to report on them. What we'll do now is create a new rate just to show you how to do it, and then we'll come back and organize this list a little bit and then show you how you can customize the rates menu. To create a new rate, we just click on the new button in the bottom left, and then the rate editing window from earlier opens up. So I'll go into very quick detail about the different controls in here. First is the function, which can either be a debt or expense or credit or discount. The debt expense is the standard type. It basically means you're adding an item to a project that your client owes you for. Credit or discount is a discount on a project, which would then be negative, and you would owe your client for that amount. So if you have any discount types or negative types, you could create those as a credit or discount, but in general, most items that you're going to add and be billing for would be debt expense. Next is the type, which could be standard, hourly, or recurring. Standard is just a flat rate item, which could either be a one-time item that's added to the project as an expense, or if you have mileage, for example, where you would enter the item and the unit price, you create that as standard. Hourly is the next type. That's pretty self-explanatory in that you can track hours, you can use Studiometry's timers, you can enter it in a timesheet. But for hourly, you have rates and your hours, and that calculates the item's total. And then finally, recurring. Recurring items are used in Studiometry to automatically recreate items periodically. So if you, for example, charge for a monthly server fee to your client, you can create a type of server fee and then set it up as recurring and add it to a project, and then you can have Studiometry automatically bill your client every month. So those are the types. Next up are the default amounts and default markups. Default amount for a standard type is really just what will automatically be entered. You can customize these on a per item level, so when you're creating a new work item, you can change the amount of that item, but this is just what will automatically be entered. For hourly items, you can see it's just the rate. So if we have a type of work where we charge $100 an hour, we'd enter 100 into here. The cost rate is if we want to track the profit on the item. Say, for example, we have a type of work where we charge $100 an hour, but it costs us $50 per hour. We can enter the cost rate here. You can leave these blank. This is obviously a lot of information, but it's all available to use, but you don't have to use it all right away. The markup is only used for standard items, and for markup you have different ways to mark the item up. You can mark it up as a flat percent, a per unit amount, and a fixed on total amount. And this is all shown to you when you're creating the work item, and it'll show you how it's all calculated, but it's really just a convenient way to pre-enter marked up amounts for work items. So those are the basic controls. If you have any questions about any of that, since there's a lot of information, please feel free to get in touch with us at support.orange.net and ask whatever questions you'd like, because there are a lot of features in Studiometry, and some of it can be a little confusing, and we don't want to have to go into all of the detail about that in this one video. So I'll continue by creating a quick example work type that isn't in our data, and it will be concepting, and it's going to be an hourly work type. Concepting. It's an hourly work type, and it will be $100 an hour, and we won't enter a cost rate. So when I hit OK, it will add this to our list. We can see it's hourly, and we can see the rate is 100. Now here I'm going to just drag it to be by the other hourly items, but we can see we have just one big flat list of items, and as we use Studiometry more and as our database grows, this list usually grows for people. You start to want to classify items in a more finite detail, and so that's why we might want to use groups within the categories and rates. Now really all that does is it's a good way of organizing your items into groups, and then it makes it a lot easier when you open up the menu, which I'll just show you really quickly by clicking test menu. You can see right now it's just one big long list. So when you create a work item, this menu will appear with all this information, and it's a lot easier if you organize it beforehand. So I'm going to create a group, and I want to use this group to organize all of my hourly types or rates. So I'm just going to select all of the hourly types and drag them into the group. And now they're added in there, and we can see that there's different levels here. It's more organized. We can rename the group. And now when I open up the test menu, you can see we have the flat items before, and then we have our hourly items within that group. So we can create as many groups as we'd like. We can organize things however we'd like in here, but really it's a great way to make this list a little more manageable as it grows. One other quick thing, this test menu that opens up can show a little more information than just the names of the items. If we hit menu options, we can enable type colors, which will show you if it's a debt, credit, recurring, or hourly item. And then we can actually show the rates within the menu as well. So now that I've enabled both of those, if I go to test menu, we can see the type of item based on the color, and we can see the actual rate for the hourly types. So it's a lot easier when you're creating a new work item to pull up this menu and see all of this information if you'd like. And this is all again done via the categories and rates editing window by clicking the menu options button. So that's how you set up your categories and rates. The last question is, how do I use them? And it's really simple. I'm going to close out of both of these windows and just go to Studiometry's main window. Now for client categories, if I just select any client, you can customize the category right within the client overview by hovering over the current category and clicking to pull up the client category menu. When we change this, we can see that the color of the client has changed, and then any lists or groups that pull based on category will then be affected by this change. For projects, it's the same thing. When you go to a project, you can change the category and status in the same section. It's very easy to do this. Now, that's how you change and assign the categories. The next step would then be to go and use that to summarize your data. If you've seen the video on groups, that's a great way to use your client and project statuses and categories. For example, in this database, we have a smart group that we named quotes, and it pulls all of the projects that have the status of quote. Now, anytime that we change a project to quote, it will appear in this group, and anytime that we change it away from quote, it will not appear in this group. Again, you can watch the other groups training video about how to set these up, but they're really easy to set up, and it's a great way to use your project categories and statuses and client categories. So that's how you use the client and project categories and statuses. Next up are the debt credit types or rates. To use these, one example of how we can use them is when creating a new work item for a project. So I'm within a project right here, and I'm going to create a new work item for that project by just clicking on the plus button under billable work and expenses. This brings up the work editing window, which there's an entirely separate tutorial for this as well. But we can use this window to create a new work item. Now under type here, when I click on this menu, it will show us the same menu that we created earlier and customized in the edit rates window. So here I can select the work type of concepting and see that it will automatically enter the rate of $100 an hour. You can enter a new description. I'm just going to enter concepting. And then for this, if we hit OK, it would start a new timer, as it says here, but I'm just going to manually enter the hours for this item. We'll say 5 hours. And at $100 an hour, that's $500. So when I hit OK, it'll add that work item to this project. And now that we've created a concepting item, that will show up in a lot of different places, one of which is the project summary, which we can access by clicking up here and selecting Summary. There's a lot of information in here, but you can see that in this table, it will show you type by type how much work was estimated and completed for this specific project. Now, the more types you add, the more detail that you have here, and so it's pretty obvious how types can be useful in that situation. Now, one of the best ways to use your types is in Studiometry's custom summaries. Custom summaries can pull data and show you a lot of information, and it really relies on the work types and the project and client status and categories. So really quickly, I'm going to just create a very basic summary that will show me all of the concepting that has been done in Studiometry. To do this, I'm going to go up to the Summaries menu and hit New Custom Summary. This window also has its own knowledge base information, and if you want to learn more about how to use this, you can just click on the little help button here to learn about all of these fields. But really quickly, I'm just going to create a summary for concepting items. To do this, I'm going to click the plus button and select debt credit type, which is a list of all the types that we had earlier, and I'm going to filter by specific types because I only want to show debt credits of certain types. So I'll go down to concepting and check that one, and then we can see that only one of the types is going to show up in this report. So really quickly, if I hit view summary, it will show me all of the concepting that has been done for all of my work items, which is so far just the one item that was created. Obviously there's many more settings that you can do. You can filter this by project type or client type. You can sort these and do a lot with custom summaries, but they really get a lot more power when your items are organized into their categories and rates. So those are the basics for categories and rates. Obviously there's a lot that you can do with them, and you can use them all throughout the program, so there's a lot more information and a lot more advanced uses of them as well. If you have any questions or you want a little more information or detail about anything that was shown in this video or not shown in this video, please feel free to contact us at support.oranged.net.